This episode of Bonus Overdrive Wednesday is sponsored by Moonlight Monster Media, home of Dirt Road Tales of Horror.
From Moonlight Monster Media comes Dustin Grammer's debut as an author. Dirt Road Tales of Horror. Dirt Road Tales of Horror takes you on a terrifying ride through the southeastern United States, where ghosts, murderers, nightmares, and beasts lurk in the shadows, awaiting any brave or unfortunate enough to travel through their nocturnal domain. Prepare to be gripped by fear and fright should you dare decide to traverse these haunted and unhallowed roads.
Tonight, greetings, fellow travelers. As the week reaches its thrilling midpoint, we are broadcasting from the mountains of West Virginia. Embrace the spirit of adventure as you join us on this daring journey through the untamed wilderness of Let's Find Out with Diego. Bonus Overdrive Wednesday.
It's time to find out with Diego. Let's go. Ooh, yeah.
On this episode of Bonus Overdrive Wednesday, I met our guest back around 2007 when I was actively wrestling for NWA Mountain State Wrestling. He's a true professional and a great locker room leader, has just completed his 35-year run as a professional wrestler. Today, he can be seen in movies like Wrestle Massacre, Boxer vs. Wrestler, and The Mountaineer. All this plus more. Please welcome to our show, Richie Acevedo, better known as the Cuban Assassin. Cuban, my friend, welcome to Bonus Overdrive Wednesday. It's been a very long time, my friend.
Oh, thank you, and it's great to be here. I don't want to correct you out on your own show, but our last name is pronounced either Acevedo or Acevedo, but I'm used to it. I've been called avocado and everything else.
And as a guy from the other side of just across the waters in the island, I think I should have known better, but you know what? I did my best there.
That's okay.
That's okay.
You're forgiven.
Oh, appreciate that, man. Yeah, don't shoot on me, man.
No.
So, talking about it's been so long. Let's go back to 2007 when I last saw you. This is what Mountain State Wrestling, and I don't know. I'm sure it was been defunct for so long now that we were doing shows. I think it was in the Beckley area or down in the Southwest, right?
Yeah, we were doing shows. That was NWA Mountain State Wrestling was Leonard Sims' promotion. Probably, and I don't like to talk negative to many people, and I personally like Leonard Sims individually, but professionally, we had a falling out later on. But he's probably by far characterized as probably the worst promoter in wrestling. But you have to give him credit for what he was trying to do, was creating something, which was started off as Mountain State Wrestling, became NWA Mountain State Wrestling. But it was in Fayette, Raleigh County, and several different surrounding counties down in the southern, eastern, and western part of the state, because he ran shows in so many different places, but primarily he would run from Hinton, West Virginia, would be more of his center base that he was running from.
Yeah, and I think the last show I did for him was in I want to say it was Princeton, West Virginia. It's way down there. And it was a long ride home. It was actually one of his better shows that I think it was packed.
Well, not Princeton. His Princeton shows was hit or miss every now and then. He had a couple of good draws there, but they were very small draws on the other part. His biggest draws that he had was actually in Hinton, West Virginia. And he would also run Alderson, West Virginia. He would run Beckley, West Virginia. Beckley was a decent draw for him because it was more of his hometown base from where he's from. He had a silent partner role with another gentleman, which is no longer here, Ward Wilson and his wife, June Wilson, which they had what was APW, Appalachia Pro Wrestling. And when that shut down, then Leonard went to do Mountain State Wrestling, and he worked with a guy we call the hot dog guy, which was a concession guy that was there for APW, which was Tom Lilly. And Tom Lilly helped, a little bit, and even took money out of his own pocket to help. But then it just solely became just Leonard Sims, and that's primarily the whole thing of Mountain State Wrestling. And then he joined the NWA and became NWA Mountain State Wrestling. And I'm not going to, say there was nothing bad. There was good and bad times like any other thing, and there was a lot of good positive experiences coming out from NWA Mountain State Wrestling. Booking could be questionable, storylines could be questionable, but it was more about getting ring time, TV exposure, because he did have television, and it was just about also working with other multiple people than being stuck and being married for someone all the time. Because when you don't want to get stuck with just one person for so long a time, and you want to be able to be versatile and work different styles with different people.
Yeah, and the time I was there, we're getting in our reps, man, because that's very important. And also learning how to work in front of a camera is very important too. Doesn't matter how many people were in the audience, because not only were you there, because also the maestro was there too. He was a great guy, and I learned a lot from him. And well, let's talk about NWA, because back then, I think I've wrestled for several companies that had the NWA. They were in that franchise. And I'm not really sure how that worked, but today that's no longer the thing. It's only one NWA now.
Well, when I started, okay, and people have to understand the NWA was the actual NWA, which was a body promoters from around the world, and mainly the United States, okay, and a couple from around the world. And they're the ones that were the deciding factors who was going to be the world heavyweight champion, the world tag team champions, the United States champion, and so forth, and be able to parade, especially the world champion, because the other champions stayed in the territory, but the world champion was the one they would parade around the territories. And of course, that would end because Ted Turner would end up buying NWA Mid-Atlantic Jim Crockett Promotions out and turn it into WCW World Championship Wrestling. And that happened in 1988. And then he fizzled out from the NWA and just made the world title the WCW World Championship. And of course, that's when the traveling world champion kind of basically stopped. And during the independence, they tried to keep, when they were individually owned, the NWA was like individually owned by one person from that moment on. So it was just a name. It was no longer the actual NWA, National Wrestling Alliance, comprised of promotions. It was just the NWA logo and name that they were owning, and they would run with their banner, and you would pay, to use that banner to advertise underneath the NWA banner flag for the individual, and in return, he would send his world tag team and all his champions, the NWA champions, and you would put them on your show, and that's how it would work. And stuff from the independents, and the independents try to really carry the NWA title until Jerry and Jeff Jarrett created TNA, along with, I guess, with Vince Russo, probably gave him the name. Then they had the alliance with the NWA then too, and then they separated their own, of course, which always happens. And now we got the Corrigan from the Smashing Pumpkins that owns the right and likeness of NWA, and he's trying to create an NWA territory. But that, my personal opinion, that's not going to work, because that was already tried before. That's what we were doing for NWA Mountain State, and I worked for many of them too. And they, that's basically the same thing he's just doing. It's no real territories anymore. The territories are dead and gone. If there's any resemblance of territories, it's all television territory today. Because you look on television, wrestling's everywhere now on television. I mean, you got WWE, which is a agglomerate company, which is TKO, and merged with UFC, so their TKO owns it now. Then you got AEW, TNA, which, and you got MLW, you got the women's WOW, and that don't count any, All Japan or or New Japan, that happens to be aired here, any Puerto Rican promotion that's aired in some places. And there's territories, including the one I just retired from, American Pro Wrestling, which are seen in different outlets across the United States on different TV outlets. So, I mean, you got a TV territory basically today than what you do a actual territory, which the actual territories were based upon from your TV viewing audience. But today it's just TV. It's all just a television program today, no longer a territory. And I appreciate what Corgan's trying to do on trying to make an illusion of a territory. That's all it is an illusion. It's but it's just the same thing that they did. He's just calling it a territory system, and it's not. If it was a real territory system, well, I mean, then those promoters would have to be part of a board. He would have to give them like shareholders and stock, and then they would have to have meetings and be able to agree on the championship. And that's not how it goes. It's all going to be Billy Corgan's say. So that's not a territory. It's not an embodiment like it was originally of promoters, and they all had to be a unanimous vote. The majority would rule in that favor, who's going to be the world champion and so forth, and then parade the world champion around the territory. And all he's doing is saying he's champions to them like they did. It's the same thing it was when you and I were as part of NWA Mountain State.
And with the current state of NWA, what is it in your opinion? And, and I really liked watching the first couple of years when it was on, and I think it was really on YouTube. But what is it about today's NWA that's having a hard time being more street level? Because back then they were dominating. Well,
when NWA Power first come on, it was a pretty dang going product. Okay. Plus he had Jim Cornette as part of the commentating team then too. So he had ideas that was also being kind of fed to him from people like Jim Cornette, which is a great, listen, I love Jim Cornette to death. One of my favorite people in the whole world. Greatest mind of professional wrestling, greatest historian you're going to come across is someone like Jim Cornette. His politics, probably not the greatest, but that's politics, Politics falls in the same category as religion. People's going to believe what they're going to believe. And but when it comes to wrestling, he is probably I'd be one of the first people I'd be wanting on my team to give me ideas. And but I think he had a great idea when Corgan was starting it, trying to be more look like the TV studio style wrestling and trying to resemble old World Championship Wrestling or Georgia Championship Wrestling, which it came from, and the Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, that same kind of studio style vibe. And they were doing pro wrestling there, but they had a mixture of the modern day style. I think the problem that Corgan has is almost kind of almost like he has more guys that's been around longer, and one of the problems he has is he kind of overtakes, like AEW's got a problem with, kind of lets the new talent that's coming in that's getting this platform to perform on, telling him what they think should be done instead of listening to the veterans that he has there and go by their call because they've been around far longer. And also I think the other problem is he has a tendency to do like AEW. Anybody that's released from WWE, he's going to just grab if he can afford it and put them on the payroll and think it's going to draw viewership for him. Some names will draw viewership, but as evident as it can be seen through AEW, for example, and I don't mean to talk or bash anybody's company or product. When you're just doing that, you're still just grasping straws of what you're doing. And if they were really big draws, then they would be packing houses like they should be doing, which they're not. They get lucky on some, but they're not on the majority. And then, now they're going to move to smaller venues, which is a smart thing to do because it makes it look more packed than having those people taking pictures. Because it's the technology, people, the social media ain't going to lie. They'll show you the truth behind the scenes now. And it happened to WWE there when the first push of Roman Reigns when he was a babyface, when people started seeing it's not working like the way that he thought it was working. And he didn't start packing houses or getting people until they turned him heel, which is what they wanted in the first place. And that was a Vince McMahon thing, though. That wasn't Roman Reigns. I mean, I think Roman Reigns really wanted to be a heel because he understood that they didn't like him. They should have catered to the fans. They shouldn't always cater to the fans. You can never go wrong with it. But Vince McMahon is just a man that has his own vision and principles, and got lost the sight of what really was working for him. That's why he lost his company. That's why all these allegations are coming out, which aren't really secrets. All these were known secrets within the business. No one ever talked about it until one woman was brave enough to say something. And when that woman started saying something, it started a whole chain of events, and he is where he's at now.
It's a different time now. I think a lot of these things that come to light are no longer, not that it was acceptable back then, but now is even more of a.
It's hard to keep secrets. Yeah. It's hard to keep secrets today. It is very hard to keep secrets today. And with the technology that exists, and with everything that people try to do with the technology that they have, it's so easy to get caught and get in trouble for things that you've done, in your personal affairs. And then this is something I thought was weird, like all these NDAs, like you can settle out of court, pay a settlement, and have them sign an NDA, and that's perfectly legal, which I think changes the whole system of a bunch of stuff that happens, because now it's like, okay, so you're filling people out there that they can do wrong, and then settle out of court and pay a sum and have an NDA signed, and then all of a sudden when they talk about the NDA, then you're breaking the law when you break that NDA. That individual is. I mean, yeah, you can get that other person that had the NDA signed in trouble, but you can get yourself in trouble legally because of that. Because you're not only did you break the NDA, but now you're doing defaming an individual, even though you're telling the truth, because you signed an NDA.
Yeah, it's a tough situation to be in for sure, but that's what I don't understand. And I'm not a legal person. I'm just a regular Joe Lunchpail guy. But if somebody signs a document and XYZ amount of money,
it's a business thing then.
Right.
See, it becomes a business thing, right? Mm-hmm. And all courts are, and people have to understand this. The term court, I mean, if you think about it, they had back in a long time before America and all this, the king and the queen, they would call you to court, and they were the judges. The king was the ultimate judge, made the ruling. It went by the king. So you're coming to court and being tried by a king. And of course, today, court, the president of the United States can't try everybody in the nation now. So you have individual laws from federal and all the way down. So you have judges, and you have magistrates and clergymen that handle all that now. And a court is basically a live theatrical play. And like I've been watching a lot of, and I do a lot of research for my own indie film work and everything, but I research a lot of things, and I realize how corrupt a lot of the laws are. Like, to me, if you're accused of something and it's supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, but it seems like today's society, you're extreme, especially when the news gets it, you're guilty until you can prove your innocence. And what happens is when you go to court, then if a prosecutor, you're supposed to be able to defend yourself, your name with all evidence, and you bring all this evidence that proves your innocence, and then all of a sudden a prosecuting attorney or DA doesn't agree with that, it goes to the judge and says you can't use that. And then the judge will determine what could be admitted as evidence or not. Well, to me, that's unconstitutional. I think that's a violation of a person's constitutional rights. I'm supposed to have a constitutional right to defend myself from court and prove my innocence. And you're not going to allow the very evidence. All evidence should be seen. And I think it's bad that a jury cannot see or hear that information, and for a judge to tell a jury when they heard something, strict it out of the records. Once you heard it, brother. It's already been heard and said. You can't. And see, to me, I think that's unconstitutional. I think all evidence should be presented, and shown. And I also think that you should not be convicted of circumstantial evidence, because you can look guilty by circumstance and not be guilty at all. And that's been proven time in and time out. And so our courtroom is more of a work, but it has a deciding fate and factor in someone's lives and other people's lives. And then once that hits the news in the public, and you may be innocent, found guilty, you're guilty in public opinion for the rest. Even if evidence comes out and proves you're innocent, you're still seen as a guilty person. And that's, to me, the court's fault, because it's a violation. And that's why they end up having to settle out of court from individual lawsuits for a large amount of money, because they defamed that person when they lost that case.
It's huge money, because now they'll give you that money, but you're not allowed to talk that they gave you that money.
Yeah, they make you sign an NDA. Again, another thing.
We're back where it started.
That's where the NDAs come from, was from all those defamation suits from people who was criminally tried in court and convicted, and then all of a sudden, they prove their innocence, and that's where the NDAs come from. And then everybody else started following suit. And Vince McMahon was one of those people who followed suit. Why? Because his wife, soon to be ex probably, Linda McMahon, was a lawyer. I mean, go figure. They're gonna go that he was gonna go that route, and it's no been secret that everybody known that Vince and Linda have been separated. Linda living in Florida, and he was living in Massachusetts, and she was in the big mansion, and he's in a condo. That's open knowledge, and people get shocked when they find it. That's open. Vince McMahon, what he done was all open, was known in the business. We just never talked about it because people needed to work and they wanted a job to make money, and it was a platform that he had that made you look like a superstar. And he was, no doubt, Vince McMahon was P.T. Barnum, 2.0. But the problem is that P.T. Barnum, I mean, I don't know if anything ever come out about his affairs and stuff, but I'm sure there's something there. People was to go research, but that's well over 100 years ago. So good luck finding any evidence if there's any.
There's always dirty laundry, whether it's show business, politics, anything
it's
like
show
that.
Business, show business for a reason. We are the masters of manipulation and illusion. That's what we are, the entertainment business and show business. And we are the masters of manipulation, and we're the ones that control that, and pro wrestling was one of the first big secrets that have been let out of the bag many times, and it's still here today. And people still believe, because that suspension disbelief to this very day still exists. I mean, how many people go up to Mark Calloway and call him Mr. Calloway or Mark? They all call him Undertaker or Mr.
Yes.
Taker. So the character is the fictional character is real, but the man is just a myth. Same thing with me. That people call me Cuban, or I have people call me Mr. Assassin. Like Assassin's like my last name, and I always introduce myself as Richie Acevedo, but I'm not going to take away from what they believe in. I mean, if they believe in that character, I did my job well, and if that's what's real to them, I'm not going to take that away from them, because that'd be wrong to do that, because they might accept the fictional character more than the man. So be it. That's the way it'll be.
Yeah, and I think when I came up in wrestling, very few people, unless I knew you personally, I'm right in the car, but we were still calling each other by our gimmick names. Yeah.
I mean, everybody called my dad when we. See, this is the thing. A lot of people don't understand this, and I'll say this in this podcast for you. A lot of people contact me, ask me how Dad's doing, and listen, I appreciate that, and especially the love for my dad. I mean, really, it's a great amount of respect, and my dad deserves it. He sacrificed a lot and everything. He sacrificed 2 families, and so forth, and he deserves all that. But a lot of people don't understand is that my dad lives in Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada, and I live in Oak Hill, West Virginia. Okay. And a lot of people don't realize that my dad left us, and he went and had another family, and my dad and I's relationship isn't father and son. It's like pals, more or less. And like, we're in the locker room, we don't dress ourselves as dad or son. We dress ourselves more as one of the boys, so he treats me no different, and I treat him no different as one of the boys in the locker room. And then the other thing is the boys will call Dad Cuban, but they would end up calling me Junior, which I hated, because his real name is Angel. My real name is Richie. There's no Junior there. If I was Angel Acevedo Jr., then that would make sense, but I'm not, and they would just call me Cuban Jr. So I just, I didn't like it, but I accepted it because it's what they're going to call me to distinguish the two. Instead, just call me Richie. But the thing about all that is that, we just called each other by our gimmick names no matter what, even to our girlfriends and wives. I never introduced anybody by their real name. I introduced them as the gimmick because that's what people perceive. And that character is what people see, and that's all they know. And it's no different from having a stage name on Broadway or having a stage name for movies in Hollywood. It's the same thing, But, I'm acting under my real natural birth name. And, Cuban Assassin is a character I portrayed that my dad created. And I took over the character because I look identical to my dad. If you see the pictures and stuff, and a lot of times people thought I was just him. And people thought I was my dad. And I wrestled in the same places my dad wrestled at and places he had been before. And people that met him knew that they thought I was him. And most promoters that I travel for, and I had an agreement. I won't tell, but if I'm asked, I won't lie about it either, So let them believe the character is the same one and the same character. But if they ask, don't lie about it. Be honest with them and tell them the truth.
Yeah, it's interesting as you're saying this. There was times where, and you've probably seen this a lot more than me, hundreds of times, where you saw wrestlers out there have a gimmick, call themselves Junior, and saying they were related to a certain wrestler, but there's no blood there. They didn't even know the guy. Like, for instance, back in 94, 95, there was a guy called Timmy Atlas. His whole gimmick is he kind of looked like Tony Atlas, but he was about 6 inches shorter and not as muscular. But people kind of bought into the work. But you see a lot of that out there?
Yes. Yeah, there's some of that goes on. And they'll try to work the boys.
No.
On that. Yeah, they'll try to work the boys to believe it. For example, there was a guy I wrestled. It was going by the name of the Boogie Woogie Man,
Yeah.
And I don't know how many Ox Baker Juniors there were. There's like 2 or 3 of them out there, and none of them are related to Ox Baker, But they all asked. What kills me, Ox is, I guess he's a good ribber from the old days, but he, they all asked him for permission to use that name as Ox Baker Jr. And he says, yeah, sure. He told all of them to use it. And, none of them are related to him. They just have a resemblance to him. I think Bull Miller was the smart one because he was a big Ox Baker. And listen, you're going to find this everywhere. I idolized my dad. I became the Cuban Assassin. Okay. There's no secret about that. Look identical to him. I would be stupid not to take advantage of that. But you like Bo James in Kingsport, Tennessee, he grew up admiring Jerry the King Lawler, and he became the king of Kingsport, like Jerry Lawler was the king of Memphis. And he emulates a lot of Jerry the King Lawler. And Bo James is also a very good historian and a good worker and a good, very smart man about pro wrestling. Another guy I would definitely have on my team would be someone like Bo James. And then Bull Miller, which was in Columbus, Ohio, who had IWA Back Alley Brawl, he idolized Ox Baker. So he became, instead of Ox, he became the Bull. Ox Baker, Bull Miller, and he had the same mustache down like Ox and shaved his head bald, so that, and there's a lot of wrestlers that do that today. I remember one time when the Hardy Boys was on top and the Attitude Era was going on, and it seemed like everywhere I went there was a version of the Hardy Boys, like
true story,
everywhere. And I'm like, are you kidding? And I can go back before the Hardy Boys, for example, the Rock and Roll Express, and for people to say that the Midnight Rockers isn't a copy off the Rock and Roll Express, they got to be idiots. the big robbery was Rock and Roll Express and Midnight Express, and just happens that they were called the Midnight Rockers. Then they just the Rockers when Vince got them. But you also had the Rock and Roll RPMs.
I was just thinking about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember the tag team that Coco Beware had with the other guy, which was another version of Rock and Roll Express, but they were the African American version of them. And actually, they were Coco Beware and his partner were pretty damn good, and the idea kind of fit them because that's where Rock and Roll Express came from. They were creation invention from Memphis wrestling, and makes sense that would happen. But I think they're called the Pretty Young Things, PYT.
Yes.
Coco Beware and his partner, and that was a version of Rock and Roll Express, a really good one in my opinion. I thought there right there could have been a real good robbery, Rock and Roll and PYT. But and even the British Bulldogs you can consider a version of the Rock and Roll Express. Some similarities but difference. But Road Warriors is another one. You had Powers of Pain, Demolition, and then of course you had the Blade Runners, which was Sting and Ultimate Warrior. So I mean, it's like so. And again, that goes back to the very first mold and very first character television, Gorgeous George. After Gorgeous George, you had Classy Freddie Blassie, the Nature Boy Buddy Rogers. Then you had Nature Boy Ric Flair, Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels, Y2J Chris Jericho. And today you got Seth freaking Rollins, which actually, if Gorgeous George was alive, Seth would be his favorite character because Seth is doing everything that Gorgeous George was doing in the beginning of that television era and creating the first television superstar and set the mold for that. That was Gorgeous George. And then you had today Seth freaking Rollins is the modern day Gorgeous George of what he does and how he comes out in the wild outfits and everything. That's all Gorgeous George. And of course, a lot of people need to understand outside of pro wrestling, Muhammad Ali stole from Gorgeous George. He even admitted in the interview he stole it from Gorgeous George. He even asked Gorgeous George for his opinion about it, and Gorgeous George gave him advice. He told him, have them hate you in the beginning, they'll learn to respect you in the end, which is exactly what happened to Muhammad Ali. Another person that stole from Gorgeous George's book was Joe Namath from New York Jets quarterback. For that 2 years there, he was bragging, and it made him a star overnight. I mean, he was bragging about that his team's going to the Super Bowl. He took them to 2 back-to-back Super Bowls, right? And said, no one ain't going to sack me. People will pack the arena just to see him get sacked. But his teammates played good for him. It made him a star, and he would come back with the Rolex watch and say, look, from last week's game, I was able to afford this Rolex watch because I told you they can't sack me. Otherwise, Jake Paul and Logan Paul doing the same thing, exact same thing. What Joe Namath did, what Muhammad Ali did, same thing as Gorgeous George. Even they emulate from Gorgeous George. They may not planned on it, but it's the same thing. You look at it, it's the same thing. They rub it in people's faces. They get people to hate them because they know it's going to make money.
And that's the sign of a good business mind, because as much as some people can be hated, you're buying into it. You're doing exactly what they want you to do.
Yeah,
come out here. Yeah.
Look at the Mike Tyson-Jake Paul fight. Biggest boxing match in history. They made it look like a WWE pay-per-view event and completely controlled, and Tyson was under contract of not to throw uppercut punches because Jake Paul was just the guy who's bringing this money, and Tyson made a hell of a lot of money for that few minutes of work, and had the largest audience viewing a boxing match in history. It caused Netflix to have problems because of it, and I mean, think about that. That's a smart mind, but and people's like, oh man, we ain't going to fall for that again. Of course they will. They're going to do it. They're going to do it with the just been signed, the Conor McGregor and Logan Paul fight that's going to be coming up. They're going to pay lots of money because they hope and pray and hope that Conor McGregor is going to make Logan Paul look bad. The Paul brothers have got to look bad, but that shows how smart they are. They know people hate them enough. They're going to buy into it. They're going to spend money, and they're going to work them. And all Logan Paul's fights are worked. Come on, Mayweather, even though he's a small guy, could have knocked him out. He just didn't do it. I mean, and then you look at You go back and look the Conor McGregor and what's his name, Mayweather. I just mentioned his name, but you look at him too. That fight too. I mean, it drew a lot of attention, and it got outdone by Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. And a lot of people want to ridicule Mike. I was like, why? I'm like, I think the smartest man in there is Mike, because Mike ain't got nothing to lose. Look, if Mike would have knocked him out, Jake would look terrible. He lost to an old man. He beat an old man by points on jabs. Didn't even phase Tyson. You know what I'm saying? And so, and he made a lot of money. He did very well on that. Came out showboating, and Tyson made money. Tyson has nothing to prove. Come on, almost 60-year-old man. He has nothing to prove. I mean, of course he's just doing it for the money. Being that age, why would you want to go get hurt?
No, he wants to live his golden years, and he made a hell of a person that night. Well, we're going to get into how this started, but
yeah,
talking about Paul, I think is it kind of like a not comparison, but kind of like a Goldberg thing. Will they eventually? Does he have to put somebody over? And if he does that, will it just kind of the gimmick will get old?
Well, I think with the Paul brothers, it's just going to take one person that's not going to give a damn about the contract. Now, mind you, you sign a contract agreement with them and stuff. If you make them look bad or knock them out, I'm sure they'll take you to court over the contract issue, which would make them look really bad if they did. Because all they're doing is proving that it's a work and not a shoot. So it's called working a shoot is actually what they're doing. But I think if he can make money, he'll go with it, and he's still young, okay? Because and he can make himself try to be a boxing version of Goldberg. But what's he going to do if he was to go against someone that's really not going to give a damn about that contract? And eventually that could happen. I mean, look at the fight between Muhammad Ali and Chuck Wepner from the 70s. That's what inspired the Rocky movie, because Chuck Wepner actually knocked Muhammad Ali down, and he was a virtual nobody. And in actuality, people in the area knew he was a washed-up boxer anyway. And it was just for a show. It was an exhibition. It was only for a show. But to Chuck Wepner, it was a real deal. And all he wanted to do was go the distance with Muhammad, which he did. The referee stopped the fight at the very last few seconds at the end of the match to give the win to Muhammad Ali, because he didn't want this guy to go the distance against the greatest of all time. And he actually knocked him down, which made Chuck Wepner famous overnight, and which led to Vince McMahon setting up the boxer versus wrestler match with him and Andre the Giant in Shea Stadium, because Vince was trying to show his dad that he can do this. And which after that gave Vince McMahon the idea to set up the thing with Muhammad Ali and Antonio Inoki.
Oh yes, I remember that.
Which they considered the first MMA fight in history, which isn't true, but it's considered the first one because it was the one that got the most attention worldwide. But the thing is, I got the whole fight, the whole match there myself, and I watched it many times because I like watching history. But it was the worst. That was talking about Tyson and Jake Paul being a bad fight. Go back and watch Muhammad Ali and Tony Inoki, the whole entire fight, and you'll see that was horrible. Andre and Chuck Wepner was more entertaining. It was only a few rounds, and before that, even Chuck Wepner and Muhammad Ali's fight was even more entertaining than that. And I got all those matches, and I watch them, and I'm like, because I like to learn from that. And Stallone copied Chuck Wepner's life, and that made Stallone a lot of money too, and made him a star overnight too as well. So you see the ripple effects it has afterwards. Same thing with Gorgeous George, is always that ripple effect. Something that really happens, it affects and changes everything. Which again was Stallone copying off of Chuck Wepner's life from the Andre Wepner fight. That's where he got Hulk Hogan to play Thunder Lips from Rocky III, and everybody asked me, what was the wrestling match that changed pro wrestling? That was easy. That's the Rocky III Thunder Lips, Hulk Hogan's Thunder Lips against Stallone's Rocky Balboa, boxer versus wrestler fight from Rocky III. That's where Vince McMahon found his star. That's when he knew he had a star, and decided to go Hollywood with WWE, WWF then, and I'll say World Wrestling Federation. I don't want the World Wildlife Foundation to come down on anybody.
No,
And,
no. I mean, to me, it'll always be WWF. So
right, and then, but that's the ripple effects. Just that ripple effect alone from Gorgeous George affected Muhammad Ali to be that character, to fight to Chuck Wepner, had that ripple effects to Stallone that was there, bought a ticket, wrote the story in one night, and was to get it on screen, which made Stallone a star. Then the ripple effects, he gets Hulk Hogan, ripple effects to Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan and Rock and Wrestling Connection, and voila, you got what you got today. You see, that's just one little ripple effect, and that came from Gorgeous George. Think about that.
Imagine he spawned a lot of he inspired a lot of people for sure. I mean, his gimmick was tremendous, and nobody did it like he did it. And since we're talking about the days, and I want to say the old days because I'm not ready to accept the old days that it's called the old days.
It is. Even our days are old days.
Well, yeah, because let's go back to that time. Let's go back to what was it, 1989?
Okay,
when things first started for you, and if you don't mind me asking this question,
sure.
Not to get too personal, when did your father know that you started training as a pro wrestler, or did he find out later once you started?
No, what happened is this is what happened. I had no problem telling this story. It's not personal. And since I'm retired from wrestling, I'll talk about everything now. But what happened is I graduated from Oak Hill High School on June 2nd, 1989. Within 2 weeks, I'll be in the ring in my first match. Within 2 weeks.
Wow.
My dad was trained in a different way, and he's trained me the same way. And when I start training people the same way, and listen, I don't mean to knock wrestling schools today. It's not like it was before in the past. It's not like the old wrestling schools, and I didn't even go to wrestling school. My dad flew me up as a graduation gift to see him in Canada. He was working for Emile Dupree's Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling. At the time, it was called World Grand Prix Wrestling. At that time, he had just changed the name to World Grand Prix Wrestling. But it was still, people still consider it Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling. And Emile, my dad was there, but I had sent pictures of me because I was a bodybuilder lifting weights, and I was real cut and I was really huge. And I sent pictures of my dad, and I didn't know my dad was showing the promoter, Emile Dupree. And my dad flew me up. See, he didn't even privy me to this information. Didn't tell me anything about it. Didn't fill me in. Or I get there, and then I see my dad and Frenchie Martin. The late Frenchie Martin, and he was just in WWF before I even got there. It was crazy. And then Dad takes me, and he says. One day he gets off the phone, and he said that was Emile and stuff, and he wants you to come with me to the arena. So I started following my dad to the arena, and the first time I met Emile, which I didn't realize I had met him when I was a little kid, because we traveled with my dad until 75, and then my mom brought me and my sister back to West Virginia to Burleson School, and we only see my dad 1 week out of a year until 1980, signed for 2 weeks, and then he left and then had another family, and that was the end of my mom and my dad's relationship, and then my stepdad would be one taking over from there. And then but get back to 1989, my dad took me there, and Emile come in, and he shook my hand and goes, "When can you start?" I'm thinking, oh, this is cool. I'm going to help put up and take down rings, make a little bit extra cash while I'm here. I said, "Start whenever you want me to." He goes, "Okay, you start next week." I said, "Cool." And I'm sitting there looking at my dad, and my dad's shaking his head like this. And I was like, what's wrong? And Dad says, "Richie, he wasn't talking about working for work. He's talking about working as in wrestling." And I was like, "What do you mean working as wrestling?" He goes, "Richie, the word for the business for wrestling is work. We don't call it wrestling, we call it working. And he's talking about you getting in the ring to work." I was like, "Oh, no, I can't do that. Dad, I'm 18 years old, and that's not what my plans were." And he says, my dad goes, Richie, you shook hands with him. Everyone saw it. Now it's a done deal. I have to train you. We start tomorrow. So I'm starting in the apartment, and Dad's had me bump on a mattress and on a freaking concrete floor. Oh. Then we get to the arena. Then he gets me in the ring, trains me for a couple of days in the ring, just bumps, hook up, collarbone tie up, the office, what the office means and all this, and how to take the arm and all that. He's not telling me or explaining nothing to me other than these little basic essentials. Then they dropped off the gimmick, the Super B gimmick, because I was one of the Super Bs up there, and he dropped it off, and PEI Prince of Rhode Island Montague had my first match against a wrestler called Tough Boy Eddie Watts, and I had met Eddie Watts, pretty cool guy and all that, and then I had to put the big end. That they're throwing me out there with just limited knowledge. All I got was, and I understood that there was going to be a finish. And I understood see, we were separate locker rooms. The heels was separate, and babyface was separate, And in this case, in Montague, they had a conjoining door, even though on the inside people didn't see it, but we still stayed separated. And Leo sent the referee to me to say what the finish is. He says the finish is going to be, you're making your comeback, boom, 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 boom. So that's a term they don't even hear today. If I was to say, you know what boom, boom, boom means, they wouldn't even know what it is. It means fight back, boom, boom, boom. And so it's like boom, 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 come back, boom, 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 give drop kick, boom, cover, kick out, boom, 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 drop kick, cover, kick out, pick him up, go to give him in the neck breaker. He's going to grab the rope. I go down, selling the back of my neck because he held the rope. He gets me in the reverse neck breaker. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I understood that part. Okay, I didn't know anything else was going to happen. I get out there and didn't have entrance music, so I come out and people's pulling me this way because there's other people that was Super B there before me. PCO was one of the original Super Bs with Eddie Watts, the guy I'm in the ring with. They were the Super Bs before me. Okay, and I was the Super B after them. And people tug and pull me and everything, and then finally I get to the ring, and then all of a sudden Eddie Watts come out and everybody's booing him. Eddie gets in the ring. He's got this mean look like he's pissed off at me. And he's like, comes to me, and the referee's calling us to the center because they did things differently. The referee's going over the rules, like in boxing. And then all of a sudden Eddie puts his hand up and stops him, and he looks at me and goes, I don't care who your daddy is, and I ain't going to be easy. And I looked at the ref, and I was like, what does he mean by that? And the ref says, I don't know. And the referee of that match was Bernie Richard. Okay. And then they ring the bell, and then next thing you know, I go to try to do the lockup, and Eddie hits me in the gut with the knee, really stiff knee, knocks the wind out of me. I ain't never been hit like that. Knocks the wind out of me. I can't breathe. Turns around, gives me a high knee lift when he smacks the hand on my back. When he gives me a high knee lift, instead of selling the knee, I'm selling the back because he slapped me really hard. And I never felt that before. And then I look and see Eddie, and Eddie goes, "Oh no!" And he takes his fingers and thumb into the eye and the mouth socket of the mask, pulls me down, gives me a stiff forearm, real hard stiff forearm. I go straight down. I still can't breathe. I'm still stinging from the slap. The forearm's gonna knock me down. I look up and I hear, "Look out!" And then all of a sudden I see this big boot coming. He pow hits me right in the head. The next thing I know, I just see the lights, the arena lights ahead going around in circles, and then all of a sudden I hear 1, 2, 3, boom, ding, 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 and that was it. Then the referee's helping me back to the locker room. I get back to the locker room, and all the boys and stuff are going to my dad. It's like, Cuban, you can't believe it. I don't believe it. Your son's a natural. He's a natural. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, natural? I naturally got my ass whipped. I mean, I don't recall anything I did after the boot, except for the 1, 2, 3 to this very day. And I remember this clearly. And I remember times being in the shower. I would be crying from the abuse I'm taking. I didn't want people to see me cry, so the showers hide my tears, and I'd be crying in the shower. And I didn't want to embarrass my dad, and I can't quit because then I'll embarrass my dad. And I was like, and I'm taking a beating. It's 80 watts next night, 80 watts next night, 80 beating the hell out of me. Same finish everywhere. And then all of a sudden we're in Antigonish, okay, New Brunswick, Canada. And the locker rooms are separate, and they have an alleyway here, and I'm peeking out, and I guess Ron Starr, who's good friends with my dad, I guess he had a soft – listen, this guy's a tough badass. I seen him almost kill a guy on a shoot. I seen him knock a guy from a headbutt from a fan that spat in his face in Bridgewater, Nova Scotia. And this guy's no person to be messing around with. And I guess he had a soft spot because, he's seen him get my ass whipped, and he can read it on me. And he was like, I hear, and the lights are out in the hallway, so they can't see us, from the locker rooms when we walk out. I'm looking out from one locker room, and I hear, Richie. And I look over, and it's Ron Starr, and he's got his mouth covered like this, too. It's dark. No one else is there, but he's doing this. Totally kayfabing, right? And he says, Richie, when you get out there, I want you to hit him and hit him as hard as you can. And I was like, yeah, right. It's like he's whipping my ass out there. And he goes, and Ron Starr goes, if you don't hit him when you get back here, I'm going to kick your ass. And he turned around, went back in the locker room. And I was like, is he for real? And so I'm out there, and I'm getting my ass beat with Eddie Watts again. I happen to glance over, and there's Ron Starr. It's the only entrance way to go in and out. I mean, I can go down through the concession, come down, but I still got to come back in the end of the same hallway. And Ron Starr's like this with his arms crossed, and he's sitting there looking with a mean look, a pissed off look in his face, and he's like, I was like, oh, crap. He's for real. And I'm sitting there, and I'm getting hell beat on me, Eddie Watts, and I was like, look, I come to rationality. I'm already taking an ass whipping. What's a little bit more ass whipping from this guy? I'm taking it every night. I certainly don't want to mess with that dude. So I went ahead and got on my knees. I reached back, and I closed my eyes, and I threw my fist as hard as I could and hit Eddie Watts in the gut. And I was waiting for it. And I opened my eyes, and then all of a sudden Eddie Watts bent over, and his eyes are real big, and he's bent over. And the first time he ever spoke to me in the ring, he's like, that's it. Throw another one. So I start throwing him, and he's like, get up, stand up, hit me in the head. And I'm punching him in the head and everything. He's selling it like a motherfucker, like I severely hurt him. He's backing up, and then he gets to the corner. He grabs me by the arm, pulls me back. He says, shoot me off, give me a backdrop. And I shoot him off and bend over, give him a backdrop. And he's selling his back like a son of a bitch. They don't do that today. And he's selling it, sitting up, and he has his left arm out. And I remember my dad telling me the left arm is the signal to take a hold. So I took a hold, and he's like, that's it. Work the arm. And he talked to me the rest of the way through the match. Now I understood how this worked. And I come back to the locker room, and I sat down, and my dad come into the babyface locker room from a different door and sat down beside me, and he's like looking around, and he's like, And I looked at him, and I was like, what? What'd I do wrong this time? And Dad goes, it's about fucking time. Richie, you can't let people beat you up. You have to fight back. To work. We have to work together. You didn't tell me that. If I taught you how to swim, you wouldn't learn how to swim. I have to throw you in. You'll learn how to swim so you don't die. He gets up and walks off, right? And I understood then. Now I understand you have to do something in there. If you ain't, they're going to eat you up. And I have to fight back and do something, and then they're going to work with you. And then Leo Burke would take his time and teach me the psychology of pro wrestling. Ron Starr was teaching me how to, I don't want to call it shooting, but it's taking advantage of manipulation, make them think that they got you in a hold, and if they're trying to be rough with you and shooting, because the guys were much larger and bigger than me. And he's like, they'll think that they got you, but you can get out of this and do this, then you got them. And then you do this, then you hurt them. He taught me how to defend myself. And the first win I ever got was a tag team match. I was tagging with Leo Burke as a Super B against Pat Brady and Eddie Watts. And of course I didn't get the pin. I was taking the heat, of course, naturally, and make the hot tag. And then Leo's boom to boom to boom, he goes, I take one, we shoot them, they kiss. He's, he's going to take them head to head. I take one, shoot them across, they kiss. He goes, I followed one out the ring. He goes, he gets the other one, the sleeper, and then the ref checks 1, 2, it's over with. And we didn't pin him. He won by a sleeper hold. That was Leo Burke's finisher, the sleeper hold. And then I asked Leo Burke, how come we didn't pin him? He goes, you can't do that. We already had a pinfall before our match. He goes, and plus we're a tag team match and we're right before the main event, and we can't outshine the main event. Main event was my dad, and I'm thinking it was his brother, the Beast. It was the main event of that show, and I was tag team with Leo in the semi-main against Eddie Watts and Pat Brady, and we sit there, and he's like, tell me the psychologist. He goes, you can't do that. We have to have different finishes. That's why you can have a clean finish. Then you can have a time limit draw, what they call Broadway. Then he says, then you can have a controversial disqualification. Then we had a sleeper hold. And then we had an actual finish in the beginning of the match. And the main event at the end of the night. So everybody can go home talking about the main event, if it's going to come back or if it's going to be a different main event, And he explained that. And that to me is my biggest peeves, even to this very day. I see that today. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, like Saturday night's main event. I was still disappointed that it was all 1, 2, 3 clean, 1, 2, 3, no controversy, no nothing. 1, 2, 3 clean, boom, 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 boom. That's very disappointing. There's no excitement in that, and hopefully they'll get it differently on Saturday, the next one coming up. One thing I will commend them on is they milked this for too damn long. Personally, was that Tiffany Stratton, because I see what the internet buzz is about, who they're talking, and Tiffany Stratton is the new Becky Lynch. And said the fans were dying for her to cash it in, and they were hoping she'll cash it in on Nia Jackson. She finally did that last night on Saturday night on SmackDown on their USA premiere 3-hour and the first SmackDown of the year. They put the title on her, and it got received really well by the fans, but they did a swerve ball in the beginning, pissed the fans off. Then they made them happy at the end, and then they finally did something smart. I was telling somebody, they better cash in. They better do something with that before they lose the momentum with it, because you can milk something too long, and it won't work. You milk it too long, and it ain't going to mean nothing to nobody. One of the biggest injustices I thought, even though it was still a good match, was the 3-way between Becky, Charlotte, and Ronda. It should have just been Becky and Ronda. That's what the fans want. But Charlotte, for some reason, Vince felt that Charlotte was the one that had to be involved in every little first time thing ever. And I never understood that. I mean, she's Charlotte freaking Flair. She don't have to be first time anything. She's the first, Charlotte Flair. I mean, she's Charlotte Flair. Why would she have to be first of anything? She's freaking Charlotte Flair. That should have been Becky and Ronda Rousey's moment. And I felt that Vince screwed it up by throwing Charlotte in there, and okay, so you respect Flair. I get it, but I would have loved to seen Asuka and Charlotte too, back-to-back WrestleManias like John Cena and The Rock. I would have liked to seen that, because they had an incredible match, her and Asuka, from the year prior. And I was like, it should have been Becky and Ronda, and Vince took it away from the fans, totally took it away from the fans. There'll never be a Stone Cold Steve Austin Hogan match. Like I thought when you had Flair and Hogan, and he didn't have that matchup come up. And a lot of people say, well, not Tom Pritchard, but his brother Bruce would sit there and say, "Oh, we experiment." And I've looked at a lot of those experiments. Those experiment matches were awesome between Hogan and Flair. But one thing I noticed that was going on is that people catered more to Flair than Hogan. And Hogan is more of a WWF product, and Flair was always the opposition product. And I'm like, that's why they didn't have Flair and Hogan at WrestleMania that year, WrestleMania 8, I think it was. That's why they didn't have it. It was because Vince couldn't have Flair overshadowing his product, which was Hogan.
There would have been monster numbers.
It should have been, just like it should have been an Undertaker and Sting match at WrestleMania. Triple H and Sting was awesome. They should have done Sting and Undertaker. That's what everybody was wanting, and Vince takes it away. Doesn't happen. That's the reason why Sting left. He was ready to come back. Oh no, you got hurt. You're an old man, but so you got hurt. You had surgery and stuff. You still come back. I mean, come on, Vince. This is something, Vince has always been about taking away, building up a momentum and take it away, make you believe it's going to happen. It doesn't happen. He did it with Hogan and Flair, and he did it with Becky Lynch and Ronda Rousey. He does that, and I think that's where he misses some key points. Vince himself the only reason why he took over wrestling from his dad and bought it out from him was because of the situation with two different people. One was superstar Billy Graham, because fans were catering to superstar Billy Graham was actually in favor of him, and his dad was old school promoter, and it's like he wasn't going to turn him babyface. He should have went with the fans, turning babyface, but Vince Sr. hired him as a heel, and this is what we have for the storyline for the championship. Like they already knew he's going to lose to Bob Backlund anyway after that period, and but instead of catering to the fans, Vince Sr. Stuck to an old promoter's perspective, and Vince Jr. always felt that was a mistake. And the other mistake was turning down Andy Kaufman. That's where Vince Jr. brought in the celebrities, because he knew that was going to bring in. That's where he got the idea, Rock and Wrestling Connection, to bring in celebrities for WrestleMania. He learned from his dad's mistakes, but yet Vince later on would do the same mistake his dad did. Instead of going with the fans, Vince Jr. would be like his dad and steal it away from him. And of course, that was his mistake. But maybe, I don't know. I don't really watch it. I just pay attention to what's in the buzz and social media, because it's everywhere. It's kind of hard not to see that. And that's how you know what's working and what's not working for somebody, is when you see that buzz. And hopefully they pay attention, because if you cater to the fans, you can never go wrong.
True, but sometimes, the fans, I think they're overzealous. They want to be bookers themselves, and they're never happy with anything. But they're not enjoying the long-term storytelling or what it is.
They don't understand the storytelling today because they're programmed. Now it's a circus act. I tell people wrestling is actually a novelty act today, or what you would call a variety TV show. And what I mean by that is like the Sonny and Cher show, or the Flip Wilson show, if you go back to times, or even Laughing. Those were variety shows, because they had a variety of acts and different, little acts and everything. We call them vignettes and whatever today, but it's a variety show. And then they rely too much on that damn self promo when people really want to be seeing more action. How many pro boxers go out in a boxing show and you see them doing a self promo in between boxing matches? It doesn't work. If you're going to do something, you should be treating like a traditional sport. Actually, go back to the interview days and interviewing them, and instead of doing a promo. I miss the days where after you had a match, you're out of breath and you're out of wind, you can hardly talk, and then they go to you and they're asking you, okay, interview, instead of interviewing the winner, how about interviewing the guy who lost? And then how about the guy be still humble? It's like, I remember a time they'd be sitting there interviewing something like a Ron Richie or something. Goes, I didn't win that one. I had to go back, train hard, look back at the footage, see what I did wrong. I knew there were some mistakes there. I knew I should have capitalized on something and be out of breath. It's like, But don't worry, you fans keep supporting me. I promise you I'll be there. I'm keeping myself in the ratings and the standings and make it look like a actual sporting type of competition. And that's the thing that they take away. Now it's about if in my mind, this never makes sense to me. In my mind, I'm going out there talking, I'm the baddest person in the world and all this. If I already got my mindset and set that I'm better than you, then why the hell am I going to waste my time getting in a ring with you? Why am I going to waste my time with you if I'm already conceited that much in myself? As a real heel, I want to compliment my opponent, I go back to use just an example, Tully Blanchard, one of the best ones. And I remember one time he had a feud with the national heavyweight title with Dusty Rhodes, and he come out on TV, and I remember David Crockett's like, fans, still your NWA national heavyweight champion, Tully Blanchard, and Tully's got sunglasses on. You can see tape over his forehead and over his nose, and he's sitting there going and goes, I walked out as the national heavyweight champion. Yeah, I won the match. Yeah, I walked out as the champion. He takes the glasses off, and he's got black eyes, and he goes, but look at my face, Dusty. Look at my face. Look what you did, this beautiful, pretty face of mine. Now it's not about the title no more. He slams the belt down. This is personal. I can't go out on a date no more. No girl will go out with someone look like me, beat up me. You just took away my good looks. I ain't going to be able to go out for a date for weeks. This is personal, Dusty. And I don't care where it's going to be. I don't care where it's going to be. I don't care what it's going to take to get you back in the ring. I want you, and I get rid of you, professional wrestling. I commend you. I may have won the match, but I took the biggest beating in my life, and look what I'm paying for it. Now I can't go out on a date and see stuff like that. That's where you make it a personal gripe. They don't do that. They'll cut them down. If I think if you're The Rock, if you're better than me, then why are you going to waste your time getting in the ring with me if you're already seeing yourself up here? You got to see some competition for me to get in the ring with me. For me to get in the ring with you, you know what I'm saying? Like when I'm a champion, I'm like, you got to prove to me that you're worth to get in the ring with me. All right. Okay. Well, all right. He won the match. Congratulations. Now I got to worry about getting in the ring with you. But buddy, I ain't the champion for no reason at all. I ain't been the champion this long for no reason at all. You're going to have a fight in your hands. You go get in the ring with me, brother. I'm going to give you everything. I'm going to take you pillar to post. I'll do whatever it's going to take to hold on to this title. And then you build up that big climatic. And if you're going to try to swerve him a little bit, then you give the guy the win, the babyface a win, but you make it where it's controversial, where the heel still walks away with the belt. Like one thing I like to do, referee's distracted or gets a blemish from my elbow when I'm in the corner, and he just can't see, and he's selling his eye, and all of a sudden I pull out the gimmick. And I go to hit the brother, and he kicks me. I drop it. He picks it up. He hits me, covers me. The ref turns around, counts 1, 2, 3, raises his hand, but he stops halfway, pulls the gimmick out of his hands, looking around, looking at me. They hand him the belt. Everybody thinks he's won. And then all of a sudden the referee pulls the belt, and it's like, no. Then he goes to him and says that, because he found the gimmick, and he says he's reversed the decision. The winner of this match, still the heavyweight champion, even though people saw him pin me. But he cheated to pin me and reverse the decision. Like, if they really wanted to do, instead of having Kevin Owens jump Cody, they should have done the reversal decision thing. It works the same way for the heel as it would for a babyface. Like with that chair shot in Saturday's main event, when Cody used the chair, the ref should have found the chair. They should have left it in the ring. And then, can give Kevin Owens the win by DQ, which sets up a return match. Does that make sense now, right?
Yeah, it does make sense. Yeah,
but they get stupid today because they forgot that they done the Vince McMahon BS stuff for all these years, and they're so programmed and tuned in that. But it makes sense. The referee counts 1, 2, 3, and then he sees the chair, and Cody's like, he'll pull Cody's hands down. Cody still retains the title, still the champion. He just loses by disqualification. And people saw him pin Kevin Owens, even though Kevin Owens was the heel. And then this gives Kevin Owens a reason why to have a rematch, and to go against Cody Rhodes again for another rematch. So this is what kills me. The storytelling is lost art today in pro wrestling. They want to call it pro wrestling today because they want to separate themselves from sports entertainment, the Vince McMahon era. I get that. But if you're going to be pro wrestling, damn well better do it. And bring back those traditional type of things. You don't have to change all of it back to the old ways. I'm just saying take small portions that make sense of stuff. And listen, like the high spot stuff, okay, I get it, for cruiserweights. But man, come on. You don't have to have so many freaking high spots. You got to tell a story. It's got to be a fight involved, and it's got to be some type of competition. When you take the competition out of it and the fight away from it, it ceases to have any luster. That's why they got so many championships today. The main titles have no meaning to it. Like the WWE Championship has no meaning to it if there's a world champion. It has no meaning to it. There's no meaning to it. That like the Intercontinental title no longer has a meaning because they have the United States title. They can have a title. I understand having titles for the women's to equal out the men's. I get that. Problem is, there's too many freaking titles. Even for the opposition, they have too many freaking titles. Okay. So no one's happy, but they're going to make up a title to make everybody happy. You can't worry about the boys. Look, it's a work at the end of the day. And if you're a box office attraction, then you work your way up, you become a box office attraction, then you can be the guy. But you got to have something there that's going to work up to it. You just can't just throw a belt on them, just because you got a belt. It ceases to have any real meaning to it. You loses the prestige. There's no prestige to any of those titles today. Before, the NWA World Heavyweight title was the most prestigious title in the world. Even though there was other world champions, but people still regarded the NWA World Champion as the legitimate world champion. There's no prestige anymore. And now they're taking the prestige away from the Intercontinental title. You see, and I just think they can do a lot less without the titles and make the talents earn that box office appeal, and if they release you, be smart about it like the other wrestlers do. And keep in mind, you can only be number one for so long. You can't be there forever, and you can only bring John Cena back so many times. And you see John's getting a little older. He's getting a little smaller. He's not as pumped up big as he was. He's got the ball spot going, So, I mean,
I know the feeling. Okay.
I got a ball spot too. Don't feel bad. That's why I'm looking at you from this view.
No, that's why I have my cap on. But and talk about a lot of changes as from your time till now, and somewhere in between from when you first started 35 years till now, you started getting into movies.
Yes.
And how did this get introduced to you?
Well, when I was on the 1999 Legends Tour for Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling, and I got to team up with my dad for the very first time, which was a childhood dream of mine. As a kid, and I traveled with my dad, from 1970 until 1975, and I would see my dad 1 week out of a year until 1980, and I wouldn't see my dad again until 1989, and I wouldn't see him again until 1999, and wouldn't see him again until 2009, and then, of course, 2000, we teamed up too, 1999, 2000, and stuff. So, I mean, last time I saw my dad in person was in 2013. But when I really started taking acting lessons, really getting involved in acting, what happened is I was on Skid Row. I mean, people don't know too much about personal life, but I was living in a friend of mine's. He had a house that was trying to be halfway converted into apartments. He made upper floor was an apartment, and his was the main floor. Then the basement was made into an apartment, and it was not finished. There was no running water. It was only one power source, and he had outlets inside the light receptacles, and almost was a fire hazard a lot of times because they would get burnt out. And I had to be careful how much power was running through that, and it was mice infested. My son had a falling out with my ex-wife, his mother, and her boyfriend at the time, and he came to stay with me. And my daughter, which was young, and she was a big Jennifer Lawrence fan, right? And she had bought this movie called Hunger Games for her, right, before that, and she was a big Jennifer Lawrence fan. I didn't know who Jennifer Lawrence was, but all of a sudden, a friend of mine named Brian Logan, like controversial guy in the Indies, calls me up and he says, "Hey, I'm into indie filmmaking, and the first movie I'm going to make is a documentary about myself." And I said, of course you're going to, And then he says, "And I want you in it." And I said, "What do you want me in it for?" He goes, "Because you were an instrumental part of my wrestling career," which I was on several occasions. I said, "Okay." So he had me come over to his mom's house, and they filmed it in the garage. There's a documentary, and he credited me as the Cuban assassin on it. And it's called Worker. The book is called Worker, Last and Dying Breed, but the documentary is called Worker, the movie. So I did that for him. And then also my friend, which you might heard of, Robert Maillet, which is Kurgan from the WWF, the Oddities, which he and I became really good friends from the Legends Tour. But the Legends Tour started from there. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself there, but it started in 1999. I go back here. I don't want to confuse people. Legends Tour. Rene Dupree got casted in the TV French series called Lunatics, and he was in an episode. And somehow something happened where they had to have me come in to work with Rene, and I was already working with Rene in the ring. For those who don't understand working, I was wrestling Rene every night, and so Rene told me that they needed me for the episode, so I went over there, and the producer was a big fan of my dad, real big fan. Grew up watching my dad there in the Maritimes from Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling, and so they had me do this feature role, and it was 15. It was a 15-hour shoot day or 12-hour shoot day, 5 in the morning to 5 in the evening. Rene, we're in Cocan Arena filming it in the locker room there. Rene and I go back, and we work. Me, Rene, Wildman Williams, Ron Gauguin, which is Emile Dupree's brother, and Renee's uncle, which was referee. We go back, and I had enough time to take a quick shower, get something eat a real quick bite to eat. I had to go back to Cocan Arena to wrestle that night, and then I had to wrestle Renee in a 30-minute Broadway match after doing a 12-hour film shoot day, and so I mean that started the ball kind of turning. But I was kind of pro wrestler, didn't want to be an actor. But then after I researched it for a while, and I realized that we've always been part of the entertainment, Broadway, vaudeville plays, movies from the very beginning. We stole some of their slang as well as we did the Carney language, so I was like, well, I'll go ahead and look into it later on. Then when it fast forward to back to 2013, when I was in Skid Row, after Brian Logan calls me, and then Robert Maillet, Kurgan, because Kurgan was on that tour, we became friends at that tour. Kurgan, called to check on me out of the clear blue and told me, he says, I've been acting in films and stuff, and I haven't looked back. You should try doing some of that, because I told him kind of the spot I was in. I didn't think anything about it for a while, and so I had to look into it. And so I started taking acting lessons, and then at the same time, Hunger Games: Catching Fire comes out, which is part 2. My daughter wants me to go with her. My daughter wanted to see the movie, so I didn't have my vehicle was broke down. I asked a friend of mine and his friend if I gave them some gas money if they take me and my daughter to see this movie. So I took my daughter. I paid enough money for her ticket, mine, and for concession. Theater's packed. We had to sit up all the way up in front, and I'm sitting there wondering how I'm going to get out of this spot I am, and I keep having this thought in my mind about Kurgan's opinion about I should try acting, because he brought up about Lunatics. That's why that came in the conversation. The movie starts, everything. I'm sitting here and I'm just thinking how I'm going to get myself out of run, how I got to get myself out of this bad spot in my life. And then Jennifer Lawrence is on screen, and I hear this whisper from behind my ears, like, Richie, you should be doing this. That should be you. I turned around, and it was 2 young kids there. I said, you say something? And they looked at me and they said, no. my daughter nudged me. She said, "Dad, stop, you embarrassing me." So I'm looking back at the movie again. And I hear, "Richie, you should be doing this." And I turn around again. I'm like, "Oh, great." I'm hearing voices. All of a sudden, I'm like, I'm thinking I'm going crazy at this moment. And I look and I see Jennifer Lawrence on the screen. And I swear, a map for no reason. Listen, I don't know Jennifer Lawrence. I never heard of her, never know anything about this woman. And I'm sitting there and a map in my head of Louisville, Kentucky comes in my mind. And a big pin drops right there, like a GPS pin on a map, and then it spreads out. But all these little pins starts popping all over the place in my mind. So I'm seeing it visually. And every spot those pins drop is someone I know is associated with film that I have met all through my career. And I'm sitting thinking, I'm freaking losing my mind. I'm letting this Skid Row stuff bother me. I'm hearing voices, I'm seeing things, and I'm trying to snap myself out of it. I go home, I'm having this dream over and over of Brian Logan, of Kurgan, about filmmaking, about acting, and Jennifer Lawrence and the freaking Louisville, Kentucky thing. And I'm sitting there, it's driving me nuts. And so I decided to do some research, and I Googled Jennifer Lawrence. The first thing that comes up when I'm reading about Jennifer Lawrence, lo and behold, and mind you, I knew nothing about this woman. She's from Louisville, Kentucky. Wow. And I was like, there's got to be something to this. So I take my acting lessons and it starts from there. And then after 2013, listen to the year, to the date that I had started my acting lessons. It was in November 2013, year to the date. Okay, I had just finished doing Making of the Mob New York, my first big production. It was the third production I did. The first production I would do would be Bounty Hunter War, which has never been produced, anything. So don't know if that'll ever come to fruition. The second thing was Brad Twigg's Milfs versus Zombies, which is been renamed 4 Milfs versus Zombies. And that was I played a small part in that, which led me later on down the road to Wrestle Massacre. But what happened was, I got on to Making the Mob New York, which I wasn't even booked for. My friend was, and he wanted me to ride it with him, which is a 5-hour drive up, 5-hour drive back. It was being filmed in Martinsburg, West Virginia. It was for AMC. And I was like, man, I don't want to be sitting out in the truck because I already know it could be a 12, 15-hour shoot day. And I said, you got the casting director's contact info? And he gave me her email. I emailed her. I said, listen, my friend's booked with you guys. He's coming up there. I was like, I'm coming up because he don't want to drive by himself, but I don't want to sit in the truck for 12, 15 hours trying to spend in a town. And I said, do you happen to have room for any other extras? And she said, sure. And come on. And she goes, send me some pictures. Send her pictures. And I sent her whole time. It's clean shaven with hair, beard. She goes, which one's current? I said, the one with the beard and the long beard and the hair. She goes, you mind shaving, clean shave, and cut your hair short? And I said, do I have to? She goes, you want to work up here? You're going to have to. And I said, all right, I'll do it. So I did it next morning, and then we took off, went up there, and I'm sitting there, and we're in Holding, place called Holding, and then we're holding all the background actors, and all of a sudden, one of the PAs come out, and she says, my prisoners, and me and my friend were both cast as prisoners, only 2. I stood up, and she goes, well, I only need one of you, but since you're standing, I'll take you. And she says, and you, since I only need one security, one correctional officer, and since you're leaning against the wall, being bored out of your mind, I'll give you something to do, and I'll take you. So they put us in a shuttle van, and the star of the series, we're in the shuttle van with the star of the series, that plays Richie Luciano, excuse me. And then I get to the set, and the assistant director is introducing himself to AD, and I'm saying I'm Richie, and then I'm sitting there, and there's this guy over here popping his head back and forth with his eyes big, looking, and he, like people around, he takes his hand and parts them like this, runs direct beelines to me, shakes my hand, goes, hi, and I thought the man was on coke or something, because he was like Speedy Gonzalez, He's like shaking my hand. Hi, pleasure to meet you. I'm the director. He goes, hey, listen, can you remember 4 words? I said, yeah, sure. And he says, okay, I want you to remember wine, red, okay, pepper. Can you remember that? I said, yeah, say it. I said, wine, red, pepper, okay. He goes, say it slower. Wine, red, pepper, okay. Say it again, slower. Wine, red, pepper, okay, okay, pepper. And then he goes, okay, come. And he takes me, shows me what he wants, and he has me do 2 run-throughs and going through the lines with the star of the film. And then all of a sudden he goes, wire him up. They bring wire, mic me up and everything. And then we're doing take after take after take after take after take. Even though everything's going fine, but they do a million takes. And so after I'm done, they have a tent there, and I go to the holding tent, and I get tapped on the shoulder with my friend. Now, I feel bad for this because I wasn't even booked for this. My friend, when it aired, the only thing of my friend that made any shot was his hand. But my line and me made it. And everybody's blowing my phone up, and I felt so bad because I was never booked for it. I just contacted the cast director so I wouldn't have to sit in the truck or find something to do 12, 15 hours because it was a 15-hour shoot day. And it wasn't even my booking. I felt so bad about it. And I took him to another shoot. We'd done other shoots for other projects together to try to make up for that because I felt bad for it. Even though he didn't care, I felt bad. But 2 weeks after that, I was on set in Pittsburgh with Will Smith playing a reporter and one of the background extras in the movie Concussion. That day was a year to the date when I had started my acting lessons, and I'm on set with Will Smith. And I was like, I can do this and stuff. And then the same casting director from Concussion casted me in episode 13 of Outsiders season 1 for WGN. And then, because I've been trying to get on it all season, all the time they cast me to the last episode. And Peter Willer, the guy who originally played RoboCop, was the director of that. He then got me, met him and stuff, and real nice guy. That was the only episode I was in. All of a sudden I get around January of 2016, I get an email from Chelsea and asking if I'd be interested in coming for season 2 of Outsiders. I said, sure. How many days you need me? She goes, well, that's up to the director. I said, okay. I figured I'd get maybe 2 days out of this. I go up there. I got 3 days film shoot, 3 days up there. So I did the 3 days. On my way back, before I even get back into West Virginia from Pennsylvania, I get a text, email saying that they want me to confirm for 2 days the following week. So I come back 2 days. Same thing happened. Every other week, I'm going back 3 days, 2 days, 3 days, 2 days, 3 days. From May all the way into October, I was part of the whole entire series as a feature role. No lines, just feature. I had a lot of FaceTime from it. And of course, we were canceled before season 3 could ever take off. But if there was a season 3, they had killed some people off, and they picked 5 of us and told us that if there's a season 3, that we noticed that we people killed off through the series. They said, don't know when or what, but you guys are going to be unionized and be principal roles in season 3 because you were seen the most, and that's how that worked. And then, we'd be killed off. I caught it all. I made the comments, I get to be red shirt security for Star Trek. Okay. And then, which I thought was cool. I would be unionized, but, that didn't happen because it got canceled. But Outsiders, got me a lot of recognition. People were watching it because I was promoting it on my social media sites, and people actually watched it. And they would take screenshots or pictures of the scenes I'm in and send them to me. That's great. And I was like, it was crazy. But it caught the attention of Brad Twigg, who I did Males vs. Zombies, and he wanted to do a wrestling horror slasher film called Wrestle Massacre. And I was interested in doing it. It's my first starring role. It's an indie film. And I told him, if we're going to do this, then we need to treat it like an actual wrestling match. He says, what I mean is got to have a little bit of something in the beginning, a little bit of something in the middle, and a good big finish at the end. But you got to tell a story, because his films are, because he grew up watching Toxic Avenger and those type of films and those cheap B-rated, and there's a market out there for that. I was really surprised. And I'm not really a horror fan. I grew up Friday the 13th, Halloween, those type of movies, but I never was a fan of it. I don't understand why women find appeal in horror, when women are mostly victims of homicide cases all across the world, but yet they're attracted to horror films. I don't know why. I hate them personally. I don't see the art for it, but this is a starring role, and I wanted to try to be an actor. And I went and done it. And then when the movie was come out, I didn't know it was going to get this worldwide release, but it did. And it got me other stuff. It led to other work. It got me also interested in being an indie filmmaker too. At the same thing, it built, because I'm a storyteller. That's what I tell everybody. That's what I am. I tell stories. What a wrestling match is, telling a story. I'm a storyteller. I just want to tell stories. So, but when I did Wrestle Massacre, and I had to go to the premiere, which I don't like doing premieres, but I did premiere. They had Q&A afterwards. And one of the questions people asked was what my favorite horror film is. And I said, well, I'm really not a horror fan at all, and I don't have one. And everybody was shocked. And someone said, well, why would you do a horror film if you're not into horror? And I said, well, because I'm an actor, and that's what actors do. We challenge ourselves with roles that we wouldn't normally do. We try to better ourselves and challenge and take challenges. That's what the whole point is. But that led me to indie filmmaking, which you brought a couple of my films up, which Boxer versus Wrestler and The Mountaineer are my films that I have done. And I got Mountaineer released out there, distributed out there, and that got me some recognition and stuff. And I've done a couple of Comic-Cons. I don't get a whole lot of calls for them, but I'll do them if I get calls. So if anybody wants me to do an appearance at a wrestling show or do a Comic-Con, do please get a hold of me. It's my full name there. R lowercase Richie Acevedo at hotmail.com. Get a hold of me. And I'd be more than happy to work out something to do, appearances, Comic-Cons, all that. But because I'm retired from wrestling, so I can do those now. But yeah, that's where the acting and stuff started from, was the 1999 Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling Legends Tour with Lunatics, and then with Brian Logan and Robert Maé Kurgan, and of course Jennifer Lawrence. If I can ever meet her, I would thank her, because it changed. I'm going to tell you, listen, after that moment, not even a full year, I was already, after I finished my acting, I was on 2014. I had gotten a car. I was gotten a new place to live, gotten to, it changed my life. That changed my life completely. All I needed was something for me to go after, and I didn't know how I was going to do it. And I just started researching everything. And I tried today. The reason why I do indie film work is because I want to help people get their foot in the door if this is a path they want to go, and to help them, to build an acting resume, explain to them how this process works. And I've been acting for 10 years. I've been an indie filmmaker for almost 5 years. And I'm on my fourth film that I'm making. Mountaineer was one. Boxer versus Wrestler is second. Legends Mountain is the third. And Cuban Assassins, a docufilm I'm doing now, is my fourth one. And I'm enjoying it. And I like helping people. And I want to help people get their foot in the door and show that they can do this. And if this is a step they want to go, because my job in wrestling, and a lot of people don't understand, is the heel's job is to make the star. The heel's not supposed to be the star. It happens they become one. But my job was to make the star. I understood that my role was to make everybody else. I was what we call back in the territory days, I was a carpenter. Mm-hmm. I was a guy that you would see in main event matches with the main eventers, putting them over. But I'm in the mid card working with guys that are underneath and trying to help them develop. And if they have a new guy that has talent enough, then I'm the guy they're going to run a program with to build and to set up for the main event. My job was to make the stars, okay, to build the house, and hence the word carpenter. And that's and I'm a storyteller, and I have no ego. I don't care if I'm the champion, main event, first match, middle match, don't matter. I don't care if I'm winning or losing, don't matter. It's not about that. It's about telling the story and giving those fans more than their money's worth on that ticket. And in film work, I want to help people, and I just want to tell stories and leave something behind that I did. So when my full retirement of everything comes, I can say, look what I did. I was a pro wrestler for 35 years. I was an actor, an indie filmmaker, and how many people I helped. And I don't ask for credit for any of that stuff because it's kind of like that saying, someone can come back and say they thank me, but look, I'm an artist. All I did was, you were already there in that big block. All I did is chip away the rough edges just to reveal what you really are. Yeah, I had some help, but you have to be the one willing to go for it. And if you make it, then great. I came close to a contract. I never got one. I never really was looking for a contract. This is something I want to press out there. A lot of people make ridicule of me and everything, but I'm going to tell you, I never was trying to get into any big companies. When I started, there was no big company. That happened within a few years. And by the time 2001 came, there was one company. Okay. Right. And I was trying to get a contract for WCW, trying to get a contract for WWE, trying to get a contract for TNA. The only reason why I was trying to get a contract, and these people can laugh and make their jokes, and I don't care. They can kiss my ass. I don't care. I tell them straight to their face, look, everybody should be trying to get to the top. But here's the thing. I didn't want to be up there in WWE. I just wanted to get one contract for at least 5 years to make a little bit of money and to get the biggest thing, the most important thing, and I advise every wrestler to understand this, exposure, national platform exposure, because then I could have milked the independents and be wrestling to my dying day, like Ricky Morton and all, and everybody else. And there were people who ridiculed me because I desperately tried to get a contract. Yes, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't? So the ones who made jokes about me, you know who you are. I'm not going to call you out. I'm not going to give you any free PR or plug on it. But you guys know who you are. You can kiss my ass. I was trying to get on a national stage level, trying to get some exposure so I can milk the independents. But guess what? It led me to acting. It led me to doing indie filmmaking, and I'm still doing basically the same thing, but a different way, a lot easier on my body, more longevity from it. And if I happen to get notarized for something in my work, then you guys can kiss my ass double time then, because then you're going to try to be my friend and my buddy. And I say, wasn't you one that ridiculed me for trying to get exposure? The whole thing of wrestling, my best advice to any young wrestler, anybody, you have to get exposure. You got to have something to show them that's worth to make you a commodity for them to sell you. And you have to understand this. If you ever get that one big break, your life no longer belongs to you. It belongs to everybody else now. That's why you get bombarded at the airports. Yes, it's going to be frustrating, but it comes along with it. And if you're not prepared for that, then don't do it, because your life's going to change if you get that momentum. But I'm very content and happy where things are. But for those who ridicule me, like I said, you can kiss my ass. I was trying to just get exposure, make a little bit of money, try and get exposure so I can milk the independence. And if you got a problem with that, then I don't know what the deal is. Everybody should be gunning to be on trying to get a large platform to get exposure. Everybody.
You're right. And if that's not what they want, they're in the wrong business. And talking about with the exposure you've got, and now you're in a great place in your life right now. You're retired from professional wrestling. Mm-hmm. You don't have to take the physical hits.
No.
But now you're going to be putting out some hits. And now, because we talked about what you're working on now, for the listeners of Bonus Overdrive Wednesday that want to learn more about you, your career, and your movies, where can they go find out?
Well, definitely IMDb. They can go to imdb.com, which is International Movie Database. They got a history of everything on me, but complete bio and films and television shows I've been on, people I've worked with. You can also reach out on me on my Facebook. I have a public figure Facebook page, which is Richie Acevedo, my name there on the screen there, an actor. But I also have 3 other Facebook pages you can get on. I suggest everybody just like the actor page because they're all connected together. I have Instagram, which should be Richie. I think it's Richie.Acevedo or Richie _ Acevedo. It's one of those two. but you can put my name in there, and it's the only Instagram page I have. I'm also available on X at Cuban_assassin, and I think it's got the actual number 2. I have a YouTube channel, which is Cuban Mano #2, which is just all lowercase Cuban, Cuban, Mano, Mano, one word, and the actual number 2, actual numeral number. And you can follow me. You can follow my YouTube and check out a lot of stuff. Me, my dad, my son, my nephew, other stuff that's on there. I got a lot of content on there. And if anybody wants to book me for any Comic-Cons, for appearances, for like Wrestle Massacre, for the Mountaineer, any of my movies, TV shows, Outsiders, Castle Rock, I was also in that. If any of those, or any wrestling shows. If you guys want to book me to do an appearance or wrestling seminars, just email me. It's all lowercase, my first and last name together, Richie Acevedo @hotmail.com. Get a hold of me. I'd be more than happy to do appearances, wrestling seminars. I'll be happy to bring my merchandise and sell and whatever you need me to do as far as appearance-wise on the show. So get a hold of me. I'll be more than happy to. I'm not against that. That's the next phase of my life is doing those and to continue to do storytelling, indie filmmaking, and to continue to act on big roles. And there's going to be more things coming down the road. 2025, I'm going to be hitting it hard now since I completed my agreement with a good friend of mine, Joe Brody, who had he's the matchmaker for APW, America Pro Wrestling. Check it out. You can also like my Mountain Man Production Facebook page. It's Mountain Man Productions. Got my mug on the emblem. You can follow it and like it. I mean, like that page. Of all my films and stuff, you can contact me through there as well. Follow American Pro Wrestling. They got a page. And follow them, but I finished my on a handshake deal, old school way, kept my word and did the whole year. And my last match was with the guy, Joe Brody, which is a good friend of mine and a good way to end it. Wasn't just my last match, it was his last match too. He came out of retirement just to wrestle me in that one last match, and it was an idea thrown to last minute. It wasn't supposed to be him. It was an idea thrown last minute, and I loved it. And it's over with now as far as pro wrestling goes. But appearances wise, get a hold of me. You can check me out on all those social media sites I have.
Excellent. All those links we put in the show description once the episode is released. And my friend, it's been a pleasure having you on. I haven't talked to you in about almost 4 years, and I know 35 years is a long time to cover, but I think there's a lot more about your story. I'd love to have you back on later here in 2025. We'll discuss more about your career, and probably by then you'll probably have another movie out or working on something. I'd love to have you back. Oh yeah, I definitely love to be back, and I appreciate being on here. And I do encourage you to keep in touch with me. I mean, being in the business yourself, you understand it from a perspective, and you come from a different point of view of the indie scene and what it is now. So it's more of a Hollywood production today than what it was. But I appreciate you having me on. Thank you. Anytime you need me, I'll be more than happy to come back. Thank you, my friend.
All content on this broadcast is a property of Diego the Podcaster and is served directly from our servers with no modification, redirects, or rehosting. All celebrity impersonators are paid performers. The impersonated celebrities do not endorse or promote any views or opinions expressed by our guests, Diego the Podcaster, or Bonus Overdrive Wednesday. The information shared on Bonus Overdrive Wednesday is provided on an as-is basis, with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness.
This episode of Bonus Overdrive Wednesday is sponsored by Moonlight Monster Media, home of Dirt Road Tales of Horror.
From Moonlight Monster Media comes Dustin Grammer's debut as an author. Dirt Road Tales of Horror. Dirt Road Tales of Horror takes you on a terrifying ride through the southeastern United States, where ghosts, murderers, nightmares, and beasts lurk in the shadows, awaiting any brave or unfortunate enough to travel through their nocturnal domain. Prepare to be gripped by fear and fright should you dare decide to traverse these haunted and unhallowed roads.